Peace and blessings be upon you, my dear listener. What you're about to witness is not a history lesson. It's a spiritual awakening. And before you skip or scroll, ask yourself this. Backhand index pointing right. What if this story is the very thing your heart has been waiting for? Because Karbala isn't just a battlefield. It's the mirror of your soul. It's the heartbeat of sacrifice. And for some, it may be the door to Jannah. Pushpin, so stay until the very end of this video. Because this isn't just knowledge, it's a legacy. And legacies aren't watched. They're inherited. Before swords were raised. Before the plains of Karbala turned red. There was silence. But not peace. The Ummah was drifting. People traded truth for comfort. Rulers wore crowns of tyranny. Justice was a memory, not a mission. And then came Hussain, may Allah be pleased with him. The grandson of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him. A man who could have lived in ease, but chose pain. Why? Seriously. If you were offered a quiet life and a safe family, would you walk into a desert knowing it might be your grave? Hussain, may Allah be pleased with him, didn't just walk into Karbala. He walked into history with his head held high. Not for fame, not for power, but for truth. This is where the story truly begins. The year was 680 CE. Yazid had claimed leadership over the Muslim world. Through fear, bribery, and inherited power. The people of Kufa sent letters to Hussain, may Allah be pleased with him, begging, "Come to us. We will support you. We will fight by your side." But here's the twist. Most of them lied. As Hussain, may Allah be pleased with him, left Mecca with his family. Not an army, just 72 souls. He was carrying something far heavier than weapons. He was carrying the trust of the Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him. Many people think Karbala is about politics or revenge. But no, it's about purification. Karbala was never just a clash of men. It was a clash of principles. Truth versus falsehood. Sacrifice versus selfishness. The divine versus the dunya. But what if I told you that what happened next, under the burning sun of Karbala, would echo all the way to your grave? Because this story isn't just about Hussain. It's about you. The day was 2nd Muharram, 61 AH. The land was Karbala. Dry. Empty. Not a tree, not a drop. Only dust and destiny. When Hussain ibn Ali arrived, he was not greeted by an army of allies, but by 18,000 broken promises. Kufa, the city that called him, had turned its back. The very people who begged him to come were now silent in fear. Their love disappeared. The moment the sword of Yazid appeared. Backhand index pointing right. Have you ever stood alone for something you believed in and watched everyone back away? That was the feeling of Karbala. Soon, Umar ibn Saad's forces, 30,000 men, surrounded Hussain and his 72 companions. But this wasn't just a siege of bodies. It was a siege of water. They blocked the Euphrates River, not just for men, but for children. Imagine telling your 6-year-old, "There's no water today, maybe tomorrow." But tomorrow never comes. For 3 days, not a drop touched their lips. And Hussain? He could have surrendered. He could have said, "You win. Give the children water." But surrender would mean recognizing tyranny. And Hussain didn't come to bow to Yazid. He came to stand for Allah. The night before battle, Hussain gathered his family and companions. He said, "They only want me. If you wish, you may leave. I release you from your oath." And guess what? Not one person left. Why? Because when you walk with Hussain, you're not walking to death. You're walking to eternity. That night they prayed. They recited Quran. They whispered their last du'as. Most of us don't even say goodbye when we close a browser tab. These people were saying goodbye to the world itself, with peace in their hearts. The sun rose on 10th Muharram. It wasn't just hot. It was silent. Even nature held its breath. The companions of Hussein stood in front, one by one, and gave their lives, each one a lion, not because they wanted war, but because they chose truth over survival. Ali Akbar, his son, just 18. Qasim, the young groom-to-be, wrapped in a martyr's shroud. And finally, even Ali Asghar, the infant, whose tiny neck was pierced by an arrow while in his father's arms. Yes, even babies were not spared. And Hussein, he buried them all, with his own hands, one by one, until he was the only one left, bleeding, thirsty, alone. Hussein mounted his horse. His body bore more than 70 wounds, and yet, his heart still whispered, "O Allah, I am content with your decree." In his final moments, he did not scream. He did not curse. He smiled. Why? Because he knew truth had won. He may have been cut down, but he would rise again in the hearts of the believers for generations to come. But wait, here's the question. Backhand index pointing right. Why did Allah allow this? Backhand index pointing right. Why didn't divine help descend and save Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet, peace be upon him? Wasn't he beloved? Weren't they on the right side? Why did the Ummah need to witness such pain? What if this tragedy wasn't a punishment, but a gift? A divine miracle disguised in blood? Stay with me. Let's ask the question that lives in every grieving heart. Backhand index pointing right. Why didn't Allah stop it? He could have. One angelic command, and the sky would have opened. The swords would have shattered. The enemies would have vanished. But Allah didn't intervene. Why? Because Karbala was not about worldly victory. It was about something higher. Let's be honest, if you and I were writing this story, we'd end it like a superhero movie. The hero wins, the villains fall, and the audience cheers. But this story was written by Allah. And Allah doesn't write for applause. He writes for eternity. Victory doesn't always look like survival. Sometimes it looks like sacrifice. Like standing on the truth, even when it crushes you. Like bleeding, and still whispering, Ya Allah. Hussein didn't die a loser. He died a proof that truth still lives, even when the body falls. Think about this. Who do you name your child after today, Yazid or Hussein? One is remembered in curses, the other in du'as. This is the miracle of Karbala. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "The ink of the scholar and the blood of the martyr are both honored by Allah." But on the day of Ashura, the blood of Hussein was not just honored, it was recorded in the heavens. Lightbulb scholars say, the martyrdom of Hussein awakened the sleeping conscience of the Ummah. It was like a divine reset. Suddenly, Muslims saw what happens when we stay silent in the face of tyranny. Suddenly, truth had a face, and falsehood had a name. Karbala wasn't just an event. It was a compass. Every generation that came after used Karbala to recenter their faith. When the Ummah forgot its courage, it remembered Karbala. When injustice rose, it remembered Hussein. When faith grew weak, it remembered the sajda on blood-stained sand. And you? You might be sitting on a couch with a coffee in hand thinking, what does this have to do with me? Here's your answer. If you ever face a moment where standing up for truth might cost you, that's your mini Karbala. Now here's where it gets deeper. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, Hussein is from me, and I am from Hussein. Tirmidhi. The scholars say this hadith is more than love. It's a hint at intercession. The Prophet, peace be upon him, will intercede on the day of judgment. And among those he intercedes for, are those who loved his family. And no one is more beloved from his family than Hussein, may Allah be pleased with him. So ask yourself, if on that terrifying day, when even prophets will say nafsi, nafsi, myself, myself, wouldn't you want to be among those whom Hussein recognizes? That's why Karbala is not just history. It's hope, a door, an invitation to love Hussein, to honor his legacy, to walk his path in the way we speak, act, and believe. Even now, every Muharram, millions remember. They weep. They relive the tragedy, not to mourn endlessly, but to awaken the soul. The miracle of Karbala is this: one man stood, and the entire Ummah still rises. Hussein planted a seed with his blood, and that seed is still growing, in the tears of mothers, in the du'as of the oppressed, in the courage of every believer who says, backhand index pointing right, La ilaha illallah, even if it costs me everything. But what happened after Hussein fell? What happened to his family? What did Zainab, may Allah be pleased with him, do, standing among the enemy, a woman with no army? And how did her voice shake the walls of power without raising a sword? If you think Karbala ended with Hussein's last breath, you're wrong. Hussein, may Allah be pleased with him, had fallen. The battlefield had turned quiet. But it wasn't peace, it was the silence of injustice. And in that silence, the world thought the story was over. But Allah wasn't done yet. Because Karbala didn't die with Hussein. It rose through someone the world had underestimated. Zainab bin Ali, may Allah be pleased with him, the sister of Hussein, the granddaughter of Fatima, the lioness of Karbala. After the martyrdom of Hussein and his companions, the enemies began their brutal work. The tents were burned. The women and children were chained. The heads of the martyrs were raised on spears. And in the middle of this nightmare stood Zainab. Imagine watching your family slaughtered, your home destroyed, and being told to stay silent. Would you stay quiet? Most of us would break. But Zainab? She rose. They were paraded through the streets, not as humans, but as war trophies. First to Kufa, then to Sham, modern-day Syria. Thousands watched. Some cheered. Most were silent. But Zainab was not. When they reached Yazid's court in Damascus, he sat on a throne, drunk on power, mocking Hussein and the Prophet's family. But then, Zainab stood. No army, no weapons, no soldiers behind her. Just truth in her heart and fire in her soul. She said, "O Yazid, do you think by killing Hussein you have achieved greatness? Know that you have only cut your own future. You have nothing but shame to carry into your grave." Her words were like arrows. Every sentence stripped Yazid of his false glory. The crowd that once cheered him now questioned him. Because Zainab turned pain into power. She turned captivity into a platform. In your daily life, what do you do when you feel wronged? Complain on social media? Shout? Withdraw? Zainab didn't have Wi-Fi. She didn't have Twitter. But she had Iman. And that was enough to shake an empire. This is where Karbala's miracle deepens. Hussein's blood woke the Ummah. Zainab's voice gave a direction. From Sham, people began questioning Yazid. Rebellion spread. He lost legitimacy, and soon after lost his rule. All because one woman stood for truth. When the whole world wanted her to remain broken, Zainab became a living miracle. She didn't just survive Karbala, she carried Karbala. And it's because of her voice that we even know this story today. Without Zainab, Karbala would be forgotten history. With Zainab, it became an eternal lesson. And here's what she taught us. Woman with headscarf, truth doesn't need numbers, it needs courage. You're probably thinking, backhand index pointing right. What does this have to do with my life in 2025? Here's the answer. Everything. Because you may not face an army, but you face injustice every single day. At work, in your community, inside your own soul. And sometimes, like Zainab, you'll be called to stand up, even when your voice shakes. And when you do, remember her. Let's not wait for another tragedy to remember the value of truth. Because today, Yazid still exists. Not in the form of a man, but in every corrupt leader, every system of injustice, every voice that tries to silence the truth. So ask yourself, backhand index pointing right, will I be among those who stay silent? Or will I be a Zainab when the world needs one? As we arrive at the final act, let us revisit the heart of the matter. Backhand index pointed right. If Karbala was a massacre, how can it possibly be a pathway leading the entire Muslim Ummah to Jannah? This is the very essence of the miracle. Karbala was never merely about death. It was about life, a life that transcends the physical, a life that begins when the soul is truly awakened. When Hussain fell on that tragic day, he didn't perish. He rose within every heart that beats for truth and justice. He left behind, through his sacrifice, a blueprint for salvation, a guide for every believer yearning for eternal peace. What is this blueprint? How does Karbala open the door to paradise? It is through these three pillars. 1. Through sincerity. Hussain, may Allah be pleased with him, didn't take up arms for fame, for power, or for worldly gain. He fought for a principle, the principle of truth and justice in the sight of Allah. Your worship, your deeds, your calls to goodness, even your silent patience, when performed with sincerity solely for Allah, they become your first steps toward Jannah. Open book. Indeed, Allah only accepts from the righteous and those who are sincere. Quran 5:27. Sincerity purifies your actions, turning simple deeds into acts of eternal value. 2. Through sacrifice. Sacrifice beats at the heart of Karbala. It's not about shedding blood alone, but about surrendering your comfort for conviction. Your time, your energy, your ego, all offered up for the cause of truth. Ask yourself, will you rise for far when your bed feels warm and sleep sweeter? Will you give charity when your wallet feels light? Will you speak up for justice when silence is the easier path? Each yes, no matter how small, plants a seed that will blossom in Jannah. 3. Through loyalty to Ahlul Bayt. The Prophet said, I leave behind two precious things for you, the Quran and my family, Ahlul Bayt. Tirmidhi. Loving Hussain, may Allah be pleased with him, and his family isn't just an option, it's a lifeline, a pathway to nearness with Allah. Not merely through emotional attachment, but by striving to embody their qualities. Humility even in power, dignity in suffering, taqwa, God consciousness in every breath. Here lies the grave warning. When Karbala is reduced to just a historical event or a story we tell once a year, the miracle dies. Because the true miracle is not in what happened long ago, it is in how it changes us today. You don't have to stand on a battlefield to betray Karbala. Ignoring oppression, excusing sin, or falling into spiritual complacency, these are modern betrayals of Hussein's sacrifice. The Muslim Ummah will only triumph when Karbala lives deep inside each of us, in our actions, our words, our hearts. Glowing star, the Karbala inside you. Today, you may not wear armor or wield a sword, but you are still fighting a battle against the laziness that keeps you from prayer, against the doubts that cloud your faith, against the whispers that tempt you to give up on Allah. Every far prayer prayed on time is your own personal Karbala. Every temptation resisted is a victory echoing Hussein's courage. Every courageous stand for truth, no matter how small, revives his immortal legacy. You are not too small to carry the spirit of Karbala, because your soul was created to remember it. Open book, a final hadith of hope. The Prophet, peace and blessing be upon him, said, Hussain is the leader of the youth of paradise. Tirmidhi. Why youth? because you symbolize the soul in its prime, pure, vibrant, full of potential, ready to change the world. This is an invitation to us all to carry the fire of Hussein, may Allah be pleased with him, within us, to live as he lived, to sacrifice as he sacrificed, and to reach for Jannah as he promised. Dear brothers and sisters, the miracle of Karbala is alive, alive in your heart, your choices, your faith. So here's what I urge you to do. Renew your intention, make your worship sincere, only for Allah. Choose sacrifice daily, in prayer, in charity, in speaking truth. Love and honor the Ahlul-Bayt by embodying their virtues. And most importantly, don't let Karbala be history. Let it be your reality. Because when you carry Karbala, you carry the key to Jannah. May Allah awaken every soul to this eternal miracle. May He grant us the strength to live by Karbala's lessons every day. And may we all meet Hussein R.A. in the gardens of paradise. Ameen. Thank you for journeying through this profound story with me. If this message touched your heart, share it with your loved ones, so Karbala's light can shine far and wide. And remember, the true victory is in how we live today, inspired by yesterday's miracle. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep spiritual content. May peace and blessings be upon you all.